On a midnight in March 1997, an unidentified flying object crashed into the plains of Peru, South America, within the dense jungle. Several hours later, a military reconnaissance team of approximately 8 to 10 personnel arrived at the crash site. Curiously, they were not from the Peruvian military, but were members of the United States Marine Corps. The Marines initially believed the crash involved a friendly aircraft. However, their findings were astonishing. The first to encounter the object was a team led by Jonathan Wigant. As Jonathan later recounted, he observed a UFO embedded at an angle in the low jungle on a cliffside. The object was egg-shaped, with visible damage on one side. A viscous, translucent substance, resembling honey, used from the damaged area. As a soldier with knowledge of aircraft, Jonathan immediately recognized that this was not a human-made craft. Its peculiar egg-like shape, combined with its ability to remain intact after crashing into a cliff, suggested exceptional durability. The craft was surrounded by a ring of vibrant, colorful energy fluctuations. These characteristics surpassed known human aviation technology. As Jonathan approached for a closer inspection, he realized that the site was already under surveillance by an unknown force. This force appeared to be engaged in recovering the crashed craft. Jonathan Wigant's extraordinary encounter was first publicized in 2000 by UFO researcher Stephen Greer. Regrettably, it remained largely overlooked for the subsequent decades. In recent years, however, with deepening research into UFO phenomena, Jonathan's account has gained increasing credibility. Let us now revisit this nearly forgotten incident of the jungle UFO crash. Jonathan Wigant enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1995, serving in the 28th Air Control Group, 2nd Low Altitude Air Defense Battalion, stationed at Cherry Point Air Station in North Carolina. In February 1997, his unit was deployed to Peru, where U.S. military personnel operated from 3 bases: Iquitos, Andaus, and Pucallpa. Jonathan's battalion was stationed in Pucallpa, tasked with protecting the airbase and ensuring the security of radar installations. At the time, they were engaged in Operation Laser Strike, a U.S. Southern Command initiative focused on anti-drug operations in Peru. The operation aimed to track and identify aircraft potentially involved in drug trafficking, forcing them to land, or, if non-compliant, shooting them down. Jonathan served as a gunner, responsible for operating Stinger missiles and Avenger missile launchers. One day, while on duty at the base, Jonathan overheard Air Force personnel discussing an extraordinary sighting. They described a UFO traveling at Mach 10, entering the atmosphere, before executing a near 180-degree turn and rapidly departing. In the 1990s, such speeds were unattainable by any known human aircraft, except perhaps intercontinental ballistic missiles, which could not perform such maneuvers. Initially, Jonathan, unfamiliar with UFO topics, dismissed the conversation as intriguing but inconsequential. However, one night, between 11 p.m. and midnight, 3 teammates urgently approached him, reporting a possible military aircraft crash in the jungle. They were tasked with investigating the site for survivors. The team quickly prepared supplies, inventoried personnel and weapons, and by 3 a.m., a group of 8 to 10 Marines departed in 5 Humvees toward the crash site. After a 3-hour journey, they arrived around 6 o'clock to 7 a.m. Though the crashed object was not yet visible, the site was identifiable by burning vegetation and trees severed cleanly, as if sliced by a hot blade. With no roads leading to the site, the team disembarked and proceeded on foot. Jonathan and 2 teammates took the lead, equipped with a compass and radio. To avoid disorientation in the dense jungle, Jonathan's team relied on their navigational tools. Jonathan was the first to spot the UFO, and the sight left a profound impression on him. The object was unlike any conventional aircraft. It was an unfamiliar, egg-shaped craft, embedded at a 45-degree angle into a hillside cliff. Remarkably, it remained largely intact. A shimmering ring of purple-green waves, resembling oil on water, surrounded the craft, creating a visible energy field. Visually estimated, the UFO measured approximately 20 meters in length and 10 meters in height. Several openings, resembling exhaust ports, were visible near the tail of the craft. Jonathan speculated these ports were designed for propulsion. Nearby, multiple breaches in the craft's hull likely contributed to the crash. As a gunner with expertise in missile systems, Jonathan hypothesized that the damage was consistent with a missile strike. He noted that certain missiles, such as those with airburst capabilities, could detonate near a target, creating shrapnel that caused irregular wounds. The damage patterns on the UFO aligned with this type of weaponry. However, this remained his speculation, as the ability of human missiles to harm a UFO remains unconfirmed in documented cases. Additionally, Jonathan observed a transparent, viscous liquid, similar to honey, leaking from the damaged sections of the craft. This liquid dripped onto the surrounding foliage. The UFO emitted a low, resonant hum, accompanied by a beam of light rotating within a surface groove. The light gradually slowed and faded until the humming ceased entirely. At that moment, Jonathan noticed his compass spinning erratically, indicating significant electromagnetic interference. As he drew closer to the craft, more details became apparent. An opening on the UFO's surface revealed a four-fingered hand, suggesting the presence of a non-human occupant. The creature appeared to be in distress, possibly dying. Suddenly, Jonathan experienced a sensation, as if the creature was attempting to communicate with him netly. This connection was intermittent, like a radio signal fading in and out. The communication seemed to convey reassurance, urging him not to fear, while also pleading for assistance. This experience was unprecedented for Jonathan, who described it as a spotlight of consciousness directed at him. Through this mental link, he perceived the creature's appearance: an oval-shaped head, large eyes, a small nose and mouth, and no visible ears. The creature stood approximately 8 to 10 feet tall, equivalent to 2.4 to 3 meters. Jonathan became so engrossed in this connection that he ignored his teammates' warnings. They shouted at him to stay back due to the potential danger. Despite their cautions, he continued forward, inadvertently coming into contact with the viscous liquid on the surrounding leaves. The substance stained his clothing and thighs, exhibiting a corrosive effect that discolored his uniform, resembling camouflage patterns. Fortunately, his skin remained unaffected, though he later noted that hair on his legs never regrew in those areas. Jonathan was uncertain about the number of creatures inside the craft, but he believed the UFO was controlled by thought, influenced by the creature's mental projections. This mental interaction seemed to affect his behavior, compelling him to approach the craft. This phenomenon resembled reports from other UFO recovery operations, such as Jack Barber's account earlier that year, which also described a form of telepathic communication. After observing the craft closely, Jonathan rejoined his team and began ascending the hillside toward the crash site. The UFO had impacted the middle of a saddle-shaped ridge, embedded in a cliff that was not particularly high. As they climbed, an unexpected event unfolded. Four Chinook helicopters roared overhead, seemingly searching for a landing zone. Simultaneously, a group of heavily armed individuals in black uniforms emerged from the jungle, swiftly surrounding the Marines. These individuals appeared to have been lying in ambush. The individuals wore black uniforms, without badges or insignia, rendering their identity unclear. They appeared to be seasoned operatives, likely aged between 30 and 40, suggesting they were experienced Special Forces personnel. Jonathan's team, consisting of only 8 to 10 Marines, all in their early 20s, was significantly outnumbered. Faced with this threat, the Marines quickly surrendered. During subsequent interactions, Jonathan noted that the operatives spoke American English but adopted a hostile demeanor, using abusive language and issuing threats. Realizing they were fellow Americans, Jonathan grew furious at their treatment. In a moment of anger, he struck one of the operatives in the face. This provoked an immediate response, and he was subdued and beaten by the group. During the altercation, his body came into contact with more of the viscous liquid from the crash site. This substance, which had corrosive properties, further damaged his clothing, creating a mottled appearance. By this time, the 4 Chinook helicopters mentioned earlier had landed nearby. From them emerged approximately 30 additional personnel, distinct from the operatives in black. These individuals wore bioprotective suits, marked with the designation Delta Oscar Echo, representing the NATO phonetic alphabet, for the acronym DO, indicating the U.S. Department of Energy. This team carried specialized instruments and tools, immediately beginning operations around the crash site. Some approached Jonathan, stripping him of his contaminated clothing and restraining him with bindings on his hands and feet. They wore gloves and administered an injection, likely to counteract potential toxic or radioactive exposure from the liquid he had contacted. The remaining Marines were also restrained and secured to separate transport vehicles. The helicopters then transported them to an unfamiliar military facility. At this base, Jonathan was placed in solitary confinement in an underground interrogation room. Bound to a chair, he underwent questioning. For 2 days, facing threats and psychological pressure, the interrogators sought details about what he had witnessed at the crash site. Their primary objective appeared to be ensuring his silence upon release. Ultimately, he was coerced into signing a non-disclosure agreement, the contents of which he did not fully read, due to his distressed mental state. Subsequently, he was transferred back to the Pucallpa base in Peru, where he was held in solitary confinement for an additional 15 days. This extended detention was likely intended to monitor for any adverse effects from the unknown substance. After no significant issues were observed, he was returned to Cherry Point Air Station in North Carolina, his original posting. Although the incident concluded, Jonathan began experiencing recurring nightmares and unexplained episodes of lost time, phenomena he had never encountered before. It remains unclear whether these symptoms were linked to the liquid exposure or the psychological trauma of the event. Additionally, he never again saw the teammates who accompanied him on the mission. The Marine Corps appeared to propagate a narrative portraying Jonathan as mentally unstable and unreliable. This tactic was likely designed to discredit any potential disclosures about the UFO crash. As a result, even if he spoke out, his account might be dismissed as delusional. Unable to endure the isolation and stigma, Jonathan retired from the Marine Corps in March 1998. Let us now examine some intriguing aspects of the UFO crash incident. A notable point is the rapid response of the U.S. Department of Energy team, arriving almost simultaneously with the Marines. There appeared to be no prior coordination between the two groups, suggesting separate objectives. Jonathan was notified of the mission after 11 p.m., departed at 3 a.m., and arrived at the site between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m., a total of 7 to 8 hours. This timeline indicates that the U.S. military maintained a sophisticated surveillance network beyond the radar site in Pucallpa. This system likely detected the UFO's unusual behavior, such as its extreme speed and its ability to enter and exit the atmosphere, as Jonathan had previously overheard. Based on these characteristics, it was determined that the crashed object was not a conventional human aircraft. Consequently, a specialized Department of Energy team was promptly dispatched to recover the UFO. The rapid response, within 7 to 8 hours, suggests the team was mobilized from a location within the continental United States. This team is likely the Nuclear Emergency Support Team, commonly referred to as NEST. Established in 1974 by the U.S. Department of Energy, NEST's primary mission is to respond swiftly to nuclear and radiological incidents worldwide. The team comprises nuclear physicists, chemists, engineers, and health experts, equipped with dedicated aircraft, helicopters, and specialized vehicles. In emergencies, NEST can requisition military aircraft to ensure rapid deployment. This capability enabled their swift arrival at the crash site to secure the UFO. The presence of the operatives in black, responsible for security, adds another layer of mystery. The Department of Energy maintains a special response team tasked with safeguarding nuclear weapons, materials, and related facilities. These elite operatives resemble special forces units, fitting the description of the men in black. However, their separate arrival from the NEST team suggests they may belong to a distinct branch, possibly under U.S. Southern Command. A significant aspect of Jonathan's account is the involvement of the Department of Energy in the UFO recovery operation. This detail aligns with information revealed in the 2023 Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act, or UAPDA, also known as the Schumer Amendment, proposed by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and co-sponsored by Senator Mike Rounds. The UAPDA aimed to establish a presidentially nominated, Senate-confirmed review board to investigate government-held UAP records. The legislation sought to grant the federal government authority to requisition UAP-related technologies or biological materials held by private entities, preventing critical evidence from being concealed. It also proposed a controlled disclosure process to release UAP information to the public, provided it posed no threat to national security. Additionally, The bill mandated automatic declassification of UAP records within 25 years of their creation, unless the president authorized a deferral for specific reasons. These provisions, if enacted, could have transformed the UFO research community. Unfortunately, key elements of the UAPDA were either rejected or significantly weakened, representing a major setback for transparency. A notable aspect of the amendment is its reference to the Atomic Energy Act of 1954, which classifies UAP records as nuclear information, exempting them from mandatory declassification. This classification stems from the frequent detection of radiation at UAP sites, coupled with reports of radiation exposure among individuals encountering UAPs. As a result, the Department of Energy has treated UAP incidents as potential foreign nuclear threats, overseeing crash recovery operations and withholding related information on national security grounds. Jonathan's account of the DOE's presence at the crash site corroborates this practice, lending credibility to his story. The timing of his 2000 disclosure, predating the 2023 UAPDA revelations, further supports its authenticity. After retiring, Jonathan worked as a truck driver for 19 years, leading a low-profile life and avoiding the UFO research community. He never sought financial gain from sharing his experience, instead enduring significant criticism and skepticism. Some questioned why he faced no legal repercussions for violating the non-disclosure agreement. In response, one might argue that prosecuting him could have inadvertently validated his claims, drawing unwanted attention to the incident, thus dismissing Jonathan's account on the grounds of non-prosecution lacks logical merit. In 2023, after years of maintaining a low profile, Jonathan gave another interview, reiterating the same details as his 2000 disclosure. His consistency, despite no pursuit of fame or profit, lends significant credibility to his extraordinary account. The absence of personal gain, combined with the psychological toll he endured, further supports the authenticity of his experience. The involvement of the Department of Energy in UFO recovery operations, as described by Jonathan, aligns with broader patterns of government secrecy surrounding UAP incidents. This connection was not widely recognized until the 2023 UAP Disclosure Act brought attention to the classification of UAP records as nuclear-related information. The Act's failure to achieve full implementation represents a missed opportunity for greater transparency in UFO research. Nevertheless, Jonathan's account provides valuable insight into the government's handling of extraterrestrial incidents. His description of the UFO's characteristics, such as its egg-shaped design and energy field, corresponds with other documented UAP sightings. The telepathic communication he experienced parallels reports from other witnesses, suggesting a pattern of non-human entities interacting mentally with humans. The physical effects he suffered, including nightmares and time loss, are consistent with known UAP encounter symptoms. These phenomena, often linked to radiation exposure or psychological trauma, further validate the impact of his experience. The Department of Energy's role in classifying UAP incidents as nuclear threats explains the secrecy surrounding the Peru crash. This classification has allowed the government to withhold critical information from the public. Jonathan's story, though initially overlooked, has gained renewed attention as UFO research advances. His detailed and consistent testimony offers a compelling case for the existence of extraterrestrial technology. Moreover, it highlights the government's efforts to control the narrative surrounding UAPs. By labeling such incidents as nuclear-related, the Department of Energy has effectively shielded these events from public scrutiny. The presence of radiation at UAP sites, as noted in numerous cases, provides a pretext for this classification. Individuals who encounter UAPs often report symptoms of radiation exposure, such as burns or illness. This correlation has enabled the government to justify its secrecy under national security concerns. Jonathan's exposure to the viscous liquid and its lasting effects on his body may be linked to such radiation. His account, shared in 2000, predates the public's awareness of these practices, adding to its historical significance. The 2023 UAPDA brought renewed focus to the Department of Energy's role in UFO recoveries, corroborating Jonathan's claims. The logical consistency of his timeline further strengthens the plausibility of his story. After retiring from the Marine Corps, Jonathan led a quiet life as a truck driver for 19 years, avoiding publicity. His reluctance to engage with the UFO community underscores his lack of ulterior motives. Despite facing ridicule and disbelief, he remains steadfast in his account. Critics often cite his non-prosecution for violating the non-disclosure agreement as evidence against his credibility. However, as previously noted, legal action could have drawn attention to the incident, inadvertently validating his claims. From a strategic perspective, allowing his story to be dismissed as fiction served the government's interest in secrecy. Thus, skepticism based on this argument is not well-founded. Jonathan's 2023 interview, consistent with his earlier statements, reinforces the reliability of his testimony. His unwavering commitment to the truth, despite personal hardship, demonstrates remarkable integrity, maintaining such consistency over 2 decades, without seeking fame or profit, is a testament to his sincerity. This concludes our examination of Jonathan Wigant's remarkable story.